One of the classes this week was relatively easy, and it was relatively easy last week too. I got to hand it to her. Last week we have this final project. It's called a portfolio project, and last week we had to decide on either a research project or she gave us this hypothetical problem that we needed to solve. So I decided to write about my research question: what are the programs and services available to prison inmates, and how do they affect rates of recidivism and criminal desistance? And then she writes back to me and says, are you sure this is what you want to write about? Because it's wide open. And I wrote back to her, explained to her why it was important to me. When I worked at the law firm, we had a pro bono client. It was the D.C. Prison Services something or other. And we worked with the Lorton Reformatory, which is no longer there. It closed a while ago. Our purpose was to help the prisoners get timely medical care. And there was this one young man, he had this terrible dental problem. I don't know if he had an abscess or something. And it had been weeks, and he was not being seen. I tell you, this kid, he broke my fucking heart. I mean, it just broke my heart. We helped him, finally. We got him, and I was interested, so all the way back then. I've never forgotten about this kid. So I told her that had interested me, and then he was in prison now, and he's very important to me, so I told her this is a subject really near and dear to my heart, but I feel like I don't need all this hand-holding. I really don't. I went to I think it was the Journal of Prison Services or something. It's a professional journal. I found a lot of stuff, so I want to put myself into this. Here's my problem. I don't know how to not be thorough. I don't like making these broad generalizations. I don't know how specific I even need to get with that. Can I just focus just on if they're staying out of prison, can we leave it at that and don't worry about maybe they're still getting into trouble, maybe they've been arrested, but not necessarily worry about recidivism in general and prison education in general, and leave it at that. And I'm sure she'll be fine with it if it's okay to narrow it. Sort of incarceration and punishment as a deterrent, but what are the prisoner's needs and what are the needs of the victim, and sort of balancing them. The more you dig into a problem and you see how complicated it is. I'm not one of these people that think there are any easy answers, but I just feel like, what we're doing isn't working. I'm just fascinated by it. And I credit Erik with this because, basically he's the reason that I'm so interested in this. I was watching some program and they were talking about the death penalty. And I thought, what would I do? And all of a sudden, I've never been pro-death penalty. I always leaned more toward getting rid of the death penalty. It just seems so barbaric. But when I thought of it, when it became personal, it just became horrific. It just became unthinkable. I feel like we're heading more in that direction of abolishing the death penalty. But so it's really a scary issue. But it's fascinating. The good thing about it is I find it intriguing, that I want to look into it more, and that I feel passionate about it. So, see, going into this, when she said do this research project, she said it was wide open, which is contrary to the way I understood it. And I thought, well, what are some of the things that I'm really interested in, like suicide prevention or helping people to die who want to die, no matter what the reasons are. I know it's a very controversial issue, but I thought I can't do that. It's too personal. I don't know that I can do this. So I thought, well, what else can I write about? I thought about all these different things, but some of the things that really interest me, they're too threatening. Well, looking too much, she said something about German language. She said even if you had done research when you were in college, when your first degree, if you want to use any of that research. And it's like, I can't write about linguistics because it's a field that I love. Nothing intrigues me more than language and linguistics. And I sort of abandoned it because I got frustrated while working on my first degree. I got so frustrated, I wanted to be done. And so I abandoned linguistics and I went with German language because I just was so much closer to graduating in German language. I only needed like two or three more courses. Linguistics it was a whole can of worms that I had to, do semantics or, what am I going to do? Just this whole plethora of this curriculum that I had not sort of engaged in at the time, and I had to make a decision. So I said, well, and I had always taken too many German courses. I had always loaded up because it was what fascinated me. So I was just so much closer to the degree. So I abandoned linguistics and just said, okay, I'm going to focus on German language. And I really sort of regret that. I said I was going to be the next Steven Pinker. I want to be the most prominent linguist in the world. That whole field is just too threatening to me because I feel like I abandoned it. Sometimes we don't want to look at the things we didn't do because they're too sad in a way. Like sometimes I can't watch, I have a hard time watching, tennis, looking at Wimbledon or whatever because it's too sad. Because that's what I wanted to be, this world famous tennis player. I feel like I've got that in common with Erik. Erik was much better than, he was, light years beyond me in his skill at tennis. Well, it wasn't even, there was just no question. It wasn't like, oh my God, I lost the state championship and I'm not going. It wasn't anything like that. It was just in normal play. I was good, but I didn't have it. I didn't have it. I was always like, I don't fucking need this. I guess it's more looking at the really successful people in a field that you admire or maybe had once aspired to. It just feels like I can't deal with the fact that, that might have been me if I had done things differently. So it feels threatening because, first of all, you don't want to face that disappointment. I don't want to relive that disappointment. I don't want to relive that whole feeling that I wasn't good enough, or that maybe I didn't try hard enough. Maybe it was my fault, or not that I didn't have natural ability, but that I didn't cultivate it. That it's somehow my fault that this did not happen. Like with linguistics, I should have said, you know what? It doesn't matter that I'm closer in German. This is what I want. I want the linguistics. But I was exhausted. I try to tell myself that I made the best decision with considering work, considering demands at home, considering everything else. I just was so sick of being in school. I had been doing it for so long. I got part-time for a very long time, and I didn't go full-time until my last 2 years. Well, we all have those dreams about what we want to do. The little boy wants to be a cowboy or whatever. Well, no, I guess I was using that as an example that, any sort of dream that you had for yourself that goes unfulfilled, it just leaves it, for me anyway, and I have to assume for others, it leaves this sort of hole inside of you. So being exposed to it just reminds you of all that disappointment, all that sadness. So maybe threatened isn't exactly the right term. Yourself in life, why couldn't that have been me? Why Pete Sampras? Why Bobby Fischer was so good at chess? Why all these people who... Well, the thing we don't realize is, let's take Bobby Fischer, who is probably, if I could relive my life, it would either be Pete Sampras or Bobby Fischer. For different reasons, But if you saw Bobby Fischer out on the tennis court, okay, he's not so wonderful anymore. Because he played, when he was in Iceland, he would play tennis, or he would go bowling because he needed to get away from thinking about chess so much. But all of a sudden, he's not at tennis. He's not a world champion. He's mediocre like everybody else at tennis. And if you see Pete Sampras, I don't know. Maybe I don't think Pete Sampras is a chess genius. Sit across from Pete Sampras at a chessboard, and then he's mediocre. So, the reason I'm saying this is I realize on some level that just because Pete Sampras is so good at tennis he's not Superman. He can't do everything. Well, I try to remind myself of that. And I try to see, when I'm thinking of how great Bobby Fischer is at chess, I try to remind myself of what he was like when he was playing tennis. It's like he was a mess, So I try to keep that in mind. When I read great writing, and it doesn't have to be literature, just I was at the library and I'm looking at one book of essays. It was by one of my heroes. He is so good. I had never seen this particular collection, so I picked it. I was going to get it. And I said, and I put it back down. I can't because I'm going to be so intimidated by his abilities, by his wit, and and what if I inadvertently steal something? Let's say I read this book of essays, and then 2 months later I'm trying to write something, and I inadvertently take one of his ideas, and because I've forgotten. I think this about songwriters. I've written a couple of songs in my time, and I think, what if I heard a song 10 years ago and I'm now remembering it, but I think it's my own. I get stuck in that. I know it happened to George Harrison, with My Sweet Lord, and maybe happened with, Robin Thicke with Blurred Lines. I mean, I love Blurred Lines, and everybody hates that song. Anyway, so it does happen, but it scares me. So the comparison, exactly, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely, it is, isn't that? Yeah. I would absolutely agree with that. Obviously, you could say that about everybody. Here's the problem, though. What does this get back to? I feel like I've never gotten the attention, though, that I wanted from it. I never got the praise. I mean, I did those short films that, in my estimation, were good. Well, I put a lot of focused effort in those films. Sure. I didn't even get the attention I wanted on that small of a level at a local. How? What attention did I get? Yeah. Not enough. They don't get up there at the Academy Awards and say, "Let me tell you about how much the audience enjoyed your performance," and then everybody claps and goes home. No, they give awards. And anybody that gets up there and says, well, I guess I'm talking about the spirit of the award. I'm getting some good feedback, and it makes me feel good. I did have a great deal of satisfaction and a sense of accomplishment after finishing that paper yesterday. I mean, the downside is there's only one person on the planet who's ever going to appreciate that, and that's the instructor. And she's going to appreciate it for 10 minutes, and then she's going to forget about it. So all that time, all that effort, it's sort of wasted, because no one is ever going to see this. No one is ever going to read it. You're right. I mean, I can see that. I do. I see that. I guess it's in the moment, though. In the moment, it's good, and in the moment, it's bad, because in that moment, you're thinking, okay, I feel good. The teacher said this was good and appreciated my abilities. But also in that moment, you're thinking, that's all it is. It's only a moment, then it's going to pass. But nobody else knows. I can't walk up to somebody in the grocery store and say, here, read my paper. Nobody else knows that I did this, that I have this sense of accomplishment. I mean, how many times have you wanted to, pull out your doctoral dissertation and have somebody read it? I mean, all the time and effort you put into that, and 5 people that you had to defend it against, they read it, they might not even have liked it, and they're saying, this is bullshit, and you have to get up there but how many times have you wanted to say, look at what I did, Do you know Studs Terkel, the writer Studs Terkel? Yeah, do you know his he had a book called Working, and then there was a musical based on Working, and there is a song in there. It's a construction worker, and he said, see that building, I did that, and I sacrificed, and nobody knows that I did that. It's very, very sad. I mean, sad in that poignant sort of way. I mean, I guess you could look at it that way, and you could say, well, everybody that I encounter has contributed in some way to the world we live in. But doesn't that get back to that too much of the kumbaya kind of stuff? You know what? A little bit of that goes a very long way. I'm not sort of ignoring it. I'm not. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, but how far can that take one through their day, through their, before sort of reality hits and you say, okay, yeah, that's all well and good, that's fine, but I also would like some direct attention towards what I've done or towards what I'm doing. And if I'm confused, I'm very thorough. If I were an instructor, you would know exactly. I wouldn't hold your hand, first of all. And second of all, I wouldn't be a hard ass. I would be very clear about what was expected and what I wanted. I don't know what's going to stop me from correcting it and sending it. I'm going to send it to somebody at the school. I'm going to say, this is not acceptable. Like I said, these aren't errors of style. These are errors in grammar. Well, I'm going to try to take it away. I'm going to try to take something from the experience. So he's going to be there tonight. So if he starts running his mouth, I'm teasing. He's not going to do that. I mean, he's a good guy. He is.